Let's go back to the beginning and tell me and tell us how you became attracted to the career of music. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Ms. Gloria Gaynor. Wow. I have to point out, we actually have a disco ball that has been suspended from this beautiful ceiling for this event tonight. Gloria, when you see that song and you hear the video, how many times do you think you've sung that song in your life?
Ooh, I'd hate to try to venture a guess. Thousands, I'm sure.
Thousands of times, and I've played it thousands of times on the radio, I might add as well.
Wonderful.
It's been a long career to where we are now with this book, We Will Survive. Let's go back to the beginning and tell me and tell us how you became attracted to the career of music.
Probably because there was always lots and lots of music going on in my home. My mother had a wonderful voice. My father was actually in show business, and my brothers all had great voices as well. So there was always singing, there was always music in my home.
And at some point, you realized you had a voice.
Yeah, I realized I had a voice, but no one else seemed to, because my brothers, you know, they had a quartet and they sang together around the neighborhood and whatever, but they didn't allow me to be involved with that because I was a girl.
Uh-oh. And you had a number of brothers?
I have 5 brothers.
5 brothers, yeah.
Yeah.
It was a big household. You grew up in Newark.
Mm-hmm.
You grew up with all these siblings. Your mom really was the strength behind the family.
She was. She really.
Take me back to Newark, growing up with mom and the kids.
Well, we were a happy family. You know, children, we were poor, quite poor, but children don't know they're poor as long as they're loved, and we were very much loved. My mother made sure we knew that. She was a wonderful cook, so much so that we always had company for dinner. No matter what we were eating, we always had company for dinner. I remember once my mother sending me to the store for dinner with 25 cents. 10 cents worth of beans and 15 cents worth of bacon skins. And she made dinner with that, and she made these crackers, I guess you'd call them, because it would have been biscuits had she been able to afford baking soda, baking powder to make them rise. So they were flat. She cut them into animal shapes so that we could have fun with them. And we had company for dinner.
On 25 cents?
On 25 cents.
That's astounding,
Yeah.
Astonishing. You're a cook as well?
Yeah. Yeah, my mother was a great cook, not a good teacher. She taught me, you know, she'd say, you know, use a handful of this, and I said, your hands are twice the size of mine. I said, well, you know what? A good cook is never afraid to experiment. I never forgot that. So I've done a lot of experiments, a lot of dishes that no one will ever know about, but a lot of things that turned out really well. And my friends like my cooking. They come prepared to take home doggy bags.
That's a good problem to have, yeah. Gloria. You began this illustrious career, but your name is not Gloria Gaynor. Mm-mm. Is it Fowles?
Fowles.
Fowles.
Yes.
So where did Gaynor come from? How did you create that identity?
I was working with Johnny Nash, and he said to me, you know, Gloria Fowles is not a good stage name because people are going to find it hard to pronounce and hard to remember. Maybe you should choose a name that starts with a G, and then people will perhaps choose Gigi as a nickname for you. And I thought, oh, that's good, but I don't know any names that start with G. And he said, well, Gaynor, or I said, that's good.
Just like that.
Just like that.
Gaynor.
Yeah.
I'll take it. I'll take it. You were 19. Mm-hmm. I'm just going to run down a list of things firsts that happened for you. You signed your first record contract with Columbia, and there were a lot of firsts after that. 1975, Billboard created the disco action charts, and your version of Never Can Say Goodbye became the first dance song to reach #1 in dance music.
Yeah.
And a young woman at that when this happened.
Yeah, very young.
What happened to your world? How did it change so exponentially at that point?
Well, first I was able to have more than beans and bacon skins for dinner. And then I began to really travel. I began to travel to Europe and South America, which was awesome for me because, I mean, I was 19 when I had my first trip to New York. So the traveling across the world was awesome for me. It was wonderful, something no one in my family had ever done. And it was wonderful experience.
So that was a big first, right? And then in 1980, I Will Survive won the Grammy for Best Disco Song, and that was sort of it for the Grammys and disco. At that point, it kind of went away after that.
Right. Well, it kind of went to Europe and the rest of the world because they're not as jaded as we are. You know, it's not all about the flavor of the month and the next new thing. They have a lot of respect for older and more experienced people in whatever area. I saw a woman, a star, a disco star in Germany who was 80 years old.
Still working?
She had her first record.
She had her first record.
Yeah, and it was a hit. They didn't care how old she was.
Right.
It was a good song, it was a good recording, they loved it, they bought it. She was a star.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
You got a lot of perspective from your travels.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. My worldview, well, first of all, I got a worldview. And it began to expand the more I traveled and just experiencing other cultures and seeing. Now, you know, I'm not so irritated and aggravated about little things because, as I often say to my friends, culture. The differences between us is very often just culture. It's not better, it's not worse, it's just different because the culture is different.
And that is the perspective you certainly gained.
Yeah.
Another first in 1984, I Am What I Am reached the top 10 on Billboard's dance disco hits.
That was awesome because it had been 5 years since I Will Survive, and you know, things were kind of getting a little bit of a lull, so I began to be able to perform more here in the United States. My audience was getting bigger here again in the United States, and it was wonderful to come home. I'm like, don't they know I'm an American? And so it was great to be able to come back home and do more performances here with that song, and to, of course, still be doing I Will Survive and all the other songs that I had done here that were popular.
So these little touch points in your life and seeing this video, when you are transported back to that era, what are the highlights that stand out in your mind, Gloria, when you say, wow, what a time that was?
Well, there were highlights in awards that I won, like being elected International Disco Queen, because it was an election that was actually done by the International Association of Discotheque Disc Jockeys. So I won that. So in winning that, they had an actual coronation at Les Jardins Discotheque in New York City, and the police barricades and ropes off, and people coming from everywhere to see that. It was wonderful. I got my crown, I got my robe, my citation from the mayor, and it was an awesome time. And then some years later, with I Will Survive, I received my Grammy, which was a wonderful accolade because it comes from your peers, people who know what it takes to get you where you are, and what it takes to accomplish what you've accomplished. So that was quite an honor. And you know, just those kinds of things are things you don't forget and things you appreciate, and they make you appreciate yourself.
It was a time for greatness, but also a crazy time, I would imagine, during that era. And when you walk down where Studio 54 is, and there's cabaret, or there's, you know, a musical playing there, and you walk into this magnificent space, does your mind go back to that time and say, I remember when, and what is that like for you?
It's wonderful because I think about, especially Studio 54, that place was amazing. I used to go there when I performed. I performed there like 4 or 5 times. And each time I'd go in the afternoon to rehearse, and it looked like an abandoned building. And you thought they're never gonna have this ready for tonight, but they always did. And each time it was completely different. And it was just really, really a great space in which to perform. And I was one of the few who was pleased to actually perform on the moving catwalk. The catwalk would move out across the audience, and I'd be, you know, the queen reigning over her domain. It was awesome.
Amazing.
It was really great. So I will never forget performing at Studio 54 and the audiences that we had there. It was great.
Well, what about your first professional gig? Was that in Newark? Was that in Jersey?
My first, God, jeez. My first professional.
Like your first time you were actually paid to sing?
I don't even know if I remember that. Wow.
How about anyone that you really remember that really stood out when you were starting in the field?
Well, I do remember one where I was in a club performing, and they didn't have stages yet. There were discotheques that they just kind of makeshift. You know, they'd take a closet and they'd cut off the top half of the closet door, and they'd set a turntable on that, and that was a disco booth, and he'd have his records behind him on the table, and then they'd clear some chairs away, and that was the dance floor. Well, I was performing on this dance floor, and I'm walking, singing. I'll never forget, I was singing a song called "A Date with the Rain." I think it was by Eddie Kendricks. And I'm walking around the floor, and I grabbed this young boy to walk with me. Oh my God, I almost had to drag him. He was so ashamed and so did not want to go with me, but he did manage to walk around with me, and we danced and we sang, and it was great. And I'll never forget that because he was so shy.
Aw. I don't think anybody would feel that way here in this crowd, do you? No, I think they'd all like to be walking with you, Gloria, right now, actually. The song of "I Will Survive," the circumstances are really fascinating. First of all, the writers are Freddie Perrin, who's also a New Jersey native, and wrote "Boogie Fever" and "Shake Your Groove Thing." And Freddie wrote with Dino Fakaris,
Yes.
who wrote "I Just Want to Celebrate" by Rare Earth, Reunited, and "Shake Your Groove Thing" as well. So these two writers, how does a song come to you? How is it presented to you, and what are the circumstances behind it?
Well, I was performing at the Beacon Theater in New York City. I fell on the stage backwards over a monitor. I jumped up, finished my show, went out to breakfast after the show, and went to bed that night, woke up the next morning paralyzed from the waist down. I reached over and grabbed the phone. I could just barely get my hands on the phone. I called my boyfriend and told him that I couldn't move. And he came and called an ambulance along the way. He said when he got there, I was screaming at the top of my lungs. I don't remember any of that. Well, I ended up in hospital, of course, and had surgery on my spine. And at that same time, the record company called and said, or wrote a letter and said that they were not renewing my contract, which would be up in a couple of months. So there I am in hospital, not knowing what's going to happen with my career, not knowing what's going to happen to me physically, if I'll ever even walk properly again. And so I'm like, okay, you got my attention. But what's going to happen with me now? So I start praying and reading the Bible, and by the time I left the hospital, I was very sure that God was going to fix things, even though I didn't know how. A month or so after that, I got a letter from the record company saying that they indeed were not going to end my contract, but they'd gotten a new president over from England, where I was quite popular, and he specifically wanted me to record a song that he'd had success with in England and wanted to repeat that success here in the United States. So they sent me out to California to record that song with two producers that we chose, Freddie Perrin and Dino Fakaris. And I'm asking them, what's the B-side going to be? And they said they'd written it, and they gave me the words on a piece of paper, and I'm reading the words, and I'm like, what are you, stupid? You're going to put this on the B-side? Some of you don't know what a B-side is. We used to have a record about the size of a CD, and it had grooves on both sides played. One was called the A side, the side they were going to promote. The other side was the B side, the side you may never hear. So that was going to be the B side, and I'm like, this is crazy. This is a hit song, because I'm standing here relating to it my spine surgery and the fact that my mother had passed away just a couple of years prior, something I never thought I'd survive. And I'm reading the words of this song, I Will Survive, relating all this to it, and I'm thinking, other people will do the same thing. They will do the same thing. They will relate to this song. They will relate to these words, I will survive. It will give them courage like it's giving me. It will give them hope like it's giving me. And so after we recorded, took it to the record company, they wouldn't even listen to it. So
they didn't
they
listen.
wouldn't even listen to it. They did not, because the president had chosen the other side and nobody wanted to buck the president's baby. So we took it to Richie Kazar's Studio 54 and he played it. The audience immediately responded to it. They loved it, which was a great sign to me because New York audiences don't immediately love anything. And so when that happened, I gave him a stack of them. He gave them to his DJ friends around New York. They began to play it. People began to request it in the clubs. Then they began to request it on radio because now they want to hear it on the way home, on the way to work. And the radio station started calling the record company asking for it, only to find they already had it. Mm-hmm. They just had to flip it and play it. The rest is history.
I think we need applause for that, by the way. When you think about it, this was like the first social media movement, and where it was really just word of mouth and going into where the people are,
right,
and communicating to them without radio first,
yes,
and then radio followed, which I love.
Yeah,
I love that idea. Yeah. Very cool.
That's what happened.
So I Will Survive becomes the song that's so meaningful to you because of the challenges you had been through physically, emotionally, and now you see everybody grasping the multi-messages coming from this, whether it's a breakup, whether it's loss, whether it's trauma. Jumping forward to last year when this book comes out, how did this book come to pass?
This idea was something that I'd wanted to do probably 10 years ago, and I was going to do it with another person because the idea came about because people have been coming to me ever since I first recorded I Will Survive with different stories of how the song has uplifted, encouraged, inspired, empowered them to make it through difficult times in their lives. And these stories have always inspired me. So I thought it's time for me to make these stories public, because what could be more inspiring than to be going through a difficult time, a difficult problem in your life, and to read about someone else who has gone through the same thing, or maybe even something even more traumatic or more dire than what you're going through, and to read that they've come out the other side victorious. So I'm thinking it's time for me to share this power, this encouragement, this inspiration with everybody.
I think there are 40 stories in here?
40 stories.
40.
Yeah.
But there is a prologue, and it sets the mood beautifully when you talk about a performance in Italy. And if you would share that story, because it was life-changing for the woman who came to see you.
Right. I had changed the lyrics. The original lyrics of I Will Survive said, "It took all the strength I had not to fall apart." I'd recently become a Christian, and I determined to change the lyrics to say, "Only the Lord could give me strength not to fall apart," because that was true. And after doing that, I went to Italy to do a performance, and I sang those words during the performance. A young lady came to me after the show, and she said, I was supposed to go home this morning back to somewhere in Asia. And she said, but I missed my flight. I said, "Oh, I'm so sorry." She said, "No, you don't understand. I think God made me miss my flight so that I could see your show." I thought, "Oh, isn't that cute?" I said, "That's really sweet." She said, "No, you don't understand. I've been having a lot of trouble recently, and I've been really depressed. And where I'm living here in Italy, I don't have any privacy. So I was going home so that I could commit suicide. But now that I've heard you sing that song, I know where my strength can come from, and I don't have to die." So there we were, standing in a puddle. Both of us sobbing and thanking God that I'm thanking him that he'd given the song to me. She's thanking him for the same thing, and as well that she was there to hear me sing it.
That's just the beginning of the book.
Yeah.
And then the book continues with these various horrific stories, or stories about loss, or stories about abandonment, or stories about health issues. They go on and on and on. What's some of your favorites that you can share with us?
Well, one of my favorite stories is of a gentleman who told me of how when he was younger, very young, I think he was like seven or 8 years old, how his father's friend asked him, they were, families going fishing together and doing all kinds of things together. And the friend asked his father, can he come and spend the night with us? And the father said, sure. So when he went to spend the night, the man had him sleep in the bed with him and sexually molested him. And this went on for a while because, they tell children these stories of how this is our own little secret, we love each other, we're friends, blah, 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 all this stuff to make him think it's okay, until another situation happened where another adult friend of the father asked could he stay with him. I don't know if the two men had spoken to each other, but anyway, he went to stay with another friend and the same thing happened, but this friend took it further and he thought, the boy thought to himself, no, this is what they do with girls, this isn't right. This was his first understanding that what was happening was inappropriate. And so he went and told his father. Well, his father didn't want to rock the boat, didn't want to stir up trouble between the families, so he didn't say anything, he didn't do anything about it. And of course the kid feels abandoned and let down and totally without any protection and any help, whereas he's thinking his father's going to, champion his problem and work things out for him. It never happened. And neither the mother or the father wanted to do anything about it. And he grew up with a lot of resentment, a lot of self-recrimination. And then he began to hear the song, I Will Survive, and it started to bolster his self-esteem and make him feel better about himself, and enabled him to even forgive his father and the men that had done this thing to him. And so he's feeling, completely different about the whole situation. I mean, of course, knowing that it was wrong and all of that, but his heart is healed.
Mm-hmm. And empowered as well.
And empowered.
And Gloria, you write a chapter in the book.
Yes.
You mentioned your accident on stage,
Mm-hmm.
your mom passing. You had another huge challenge in your life
Mm-hmm.
with your sister.
Yes. Yes, my sister passed away at a very young age. Actually, she didn't just pass away, she was murdered. And I always say she died the way she lived, because she always championed the underdog. And this woman was Thanksgiving Day, she's on the way to the convenience store to pick up the cranberry sauce that we forgot every year. And on the way, she comes across a neighbor, they start walking together to the store. Young man comes up and attacks the girl, the other woman, and my sister continued walking. When she turned to look back to see if the woman was coming along, the boy was hitting her, and my sister yelled out, "That's a lady, you don't hit a lady." And the boy tore away from the woman, ran after my sister, beat her down to the ground, stomped her in the head, and left her for dead. She went into a coma and never came out of it.
And this you heard upon your return.
I
from
heard
a
on my
tour.
return from South America. I was on tour in South America, and they didn't tell me anything about it because they knew while I was there was nothing I could do about it. And so when I came back to my sister in a coma in the hospital. And
So how did you get past this horrendous time? Because I know how close you were to.
I was very, very close to my sister, but I remembered the times that, I began to play. I got a tape recorder and I put some inspirational music on it, and I took it to play while I was in the hospital there with her, and to leave playing when I was not there. And one of the songs was "I Will Survive," because that was one of her favorite songs, and she used to always say, "This is our song, this is our song, it's especially your song." And she would remind me to sing it whenever anything difficult was happening with me. And so of course I turned to it at that particular time, and it really did help me to remember good times with her, and things that she did to make me laugh, and laughter is good for the soul. And so it really did help me quite a bit at that time.
Your spirituality and religion has been extremely important to you.
Very, very important.
And as a matter of fact, you just shared with me in the green room that you're on your way to recording some music.
Yes, some contemporary Christian music songs that I've written. And I think that I was born a teacher. So the songs that I write teach. I mean, they teach about love. They teach about how to love yourself, how to love your neighbor, how to love God, and why. and why those things are important.
So we'll be looking forward to that as well.
Yeah.
But getting back to the challenges here that we've been talking about, what else in the book inspires you? What other stories have really affected you from this compilation?
Well, one of the stories that inspires me is a story of some young ladies who graduated from college, and they were going out that evening and had on these beautiful little dresses, and they didn't want to get their dresses wrinkled, so they didn't wear their seatbelts. And they had a car accident, and all of them were killed except her. It would be 6 months before she even knew that all her friends were dead. She had such brain damage. And someone was playing this song for her in the hospital, but I promise you I would never go without my seatbelt again. I mean, seriously, that really woke me up. I wear my seatbelt most of the time, but I have on many occasions decided I didn't want to wear a seatbelt because it would wrinkle my clothes. Not anymore.
And they were sitting in the back.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is oftentimes we think we're okay.
Yes, exactly.
But not the truth at all. I'd like, Gloria, for you to read a passage that particularly intrigued me, because this is a chapter that is called Reclaiming My Roar, and it's about a woman who, she had a challenged son, but mainly she lost herself in her life. She got jaded, she felt frazzled, she felt like she didn't know who she was herself. So I thought it might be fun for you to read this phrase there.
She says, "Thank you for the sass, Miss Gaynor, for pulling me through things that seemed serious at the time and things that seemed nearly dire now. Survival is more than coming back from the insane, crazy situations in which we find ourselves. It also has to do with pulling ourselves out of the abyss of hopelessness, of drudgery, of a life dismal and stressful and without sparkle and shine."
So for her, it was about just getting back to herself.
Getting back to herself. And that can be very, very traumatic. Because, I mean, if you lose who you are, you can't be anyone to anyone, anything good to anyone else.
And she recognized that for her family as well. I'd like to talk a little bit about your moment when you really embraced your Christianity. And it seems like there was something very specific that was going on for you at the time.
Well, specifically, I was at a party in New York, in LA, and we were in a hotel, my husband and I, and a number of friends, and there was marijuana and there was alcohol, and I don't know what was about to be introduced, but I will never forget being lazing out on the shag carpet. Was all very popular in those days. So we lazed out on the shag carpet, and I remember God taking me by the back of my neck like you would a cat, like this, and going, "That's enough." I will never forget it. And I was visibly shaken, left the party, and never went to another party like that again. And it would be probably another 6 months before I actually gave my heart to the Lord, actually said what we call the sinner's prayer, where you say, "Come into my heart, show me your will, your word, and your ways," and I would live that way for the rest of my life. And I did complete 180 and just became a whole different person.
It was just like that.
Just like that.
So I'm going to say something, I'm going to try and be delicate. The record industry, in general, I think one would say, is probably one of the tougher in the entertainment world. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah.
So how do you navigate that world with your values? Has it been difficult for you?
Well, it hasn't been difficult for me. It's been difficult for those around me. Because I'm convinced. I'm convinced that this is the way. This is the only way to really come to know yourself, come to live up to your highest level of productivity and highest potential, to be really, really happy, and just to be all that you can be for yourself and for those around you. You know, you become so much more of who you really are. because now you're in touch with the one who knows who you really are and can show you and tell you and teach you. And so when you get to know those things, then you're able to be all that, and you're able to share that with other people, and share becomes the optimum thing, not beating anybody over the head with the Bible, just calmly sharing what you believe, and not knocking what anybody else believes, just sharing what you believe.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's pretty much like we're all having dinner, we all have different desserts. I have chocolate cake, and you have cheesecake and apple pie, whatever, and I say, this chocolate cake is great, you should try it. I don't want to try it. Okay, you should try it. This is really great. Okay, thanks. That was good. Oh, no, I don't like it so much. Okay, that's fine. On to the next one. You know, it's like that. And it should be like that, you know? And when it is like that, then only people who are intimidated are those who believe that they should try that and stick with that, but don't have the courage, or feel that they're going to have to give up too much of what they think is good in order to have what you have. Those are the only people who are, and those are the people that it becomes difficult for.
But for you, you're
It's fine.
clear.
I'm very clear.
You were married, and your husband was your manager, which is not easy to be married to your manager, I would imagine. At some point, it didn't work out.
Right.
And you were no longer married.
Right.
But there was a time, you write in the book, that you said enough is enough.
Yeah.
You reached your point.
I did. I gave, I believe, I mean, he may have a different point of view, but from my point of view, I gave my marriage 150% of everything that I had to the marriage. I tried everything that I could. The one big mistake that I made, that so many, I will say, women make, is that I didn't have very many boundaries. He had 100 boundaries, I observed them all, I had none. And you must set boundaries in a relationship. There must be a point at which I end and you begin. And it was like, no, it was all him. And I allowed that. And so it's hard to turn things around when that happens, when you do that. So I couldn't turn it around, and it just got to be too much. And I often say that he had taken up permanent residence in a state of denial. And so I decided it was time for me to make some changes, and I had to do that.
And you had your song, you had your religion, and you had the ability to just clearly move on from there.
Yes. Yes.
Would you marry again, Gloria?
I would if God told me to. No, I mean, seriously, if I felt that this was a man that you know, a match made in heaven, so to speak. I mean, somebody who not only shared my values, but shared my priorities within those values. Then yeah, I could get married again.
All right, just putting it out there, letting you know. Never know. We have, I believe, some people from the Boys and Girls Club in the house tonight. Is that correct? From New Jersey? Couple? Well, I want to welcome you. Thank you for coming. Gloria is actively involved with that charity and many other community-based charities. Would you tell us about some of them?
Well, there are, let me see, there's Trinitas Hospital in Elizabeth, there's the Miami Children's Hospital in Miami, Florida, there is Diabetes Foundation and Alzheimer's and cancer and cerebral palsy and Child Fund.
Wow. That's it?
Yeah.
That's all?
Yeah, I think so.
You had a little stint, I was mentioning before about the Jersey Boys becoming Midtown Men. You had a little stint on Broadway, just once.
Yeah.
But why? We want you back.
Too much work.
Too much work.
Too much work.
Do you think you might be able to work something out at some point?
I would only want to do a couple of weeks because it just really is an awful lot of work. It really, really is. And it's just not something I'm interested in doing long term.
Did you enjoy your
I
run?
did. I really enjoyed it. The cast was certifiable. Insane. They were gone.
This was Smokey Joe's Cafe, by the way.
Smokey Joe's Cafe. The night before the first performance, I got up in the middle of the night and stumped my toe. And I thought, oh, that really hurt. And I put some ice on it and went back to bed, woke up the next morning, and the toe was really hurting. And so I called them and I said, I think I need to go to the doctor because I can't put my shoes on. And they said, no, come and go to our doctor. So I go to their doctor and he tells me my toe is broken and there's nothing that he can do about it. You can't put your toe in a cast. So I thought, oh my God, I have a performance tonight. What am I going to do? He said, well, I can put a shot of Novocaine or something like that to numb the toe, and then you can put your shoes on and do your performance. I said, okay, fine. So I did that, and every night he came to the theater and numbed my toe. Saturday, there's a double performance, matinee and the evening show. He comes in the afternoon, and he's about to put the shot, and my toe is so tender from these shots every night. And I'm sitting there going, oh God, this is gonna hurt. And he says, here, take this pillow, bite down on it. I bit down on it and broke my front tooth.
Oh no.
Okay, so now there I am looking like, I said, look, I'm not going on stage singing, all I want for Christmas is my one front tooth. So I said, I'm gonna put some crazy glue on this thing. I'm putting it in, and if it comes off on stage, somebody's gonna have to finish my song because I am gone. So I went on, I did it, and between shows, I went and had a temporary put in and finished out the rest. Well, when I came back on Tuesday for the first performance the following week, the cast is standing at when I opened the dressing room door, one has a cast on her leg, one has one on her foot, one has an arm in the cast, one has something around the neck with a skull in the cast. I'm like, you guys are sick. Just but they were a lot of fun. It was really, really a wonderful time.
That's the Broadway community for you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Very embracing, very loving.
Yeah.
What don't we know about you, Gloria? What don't we know? We know that you like to cook.
Mm-hmm.
We know you like board games,
Mm-hmm.
movies.
Mm-hmm.
What else?
Sewing.
Did not know this.
Yes, I used to make all my clothes when I went on my stage clothes. In fact, I used to make my street clothes as well. My mother was a seamstress, and when she passed, I'd never sewed. When she passed away, she had cut out an outfit for me from some fabric that I bought. And I thought, well, let me just try to put this together. If I botch it, so what? It's no good anyway. I put it together, it came out nicely, and I've been sewing ever since.
Another great talent.
Yeah.
Another great talent. Well, we're taking a couple of questions from the audience. And the first one, were you friendly with Donna Summer, and what are your memories of her?
Yes, I was friendly with Donna Summer. She was a lovely lady and apparently a great conversationalist, because I'll never forget us coming back from Germany. We'd both been performing in Germany. We met on the flight. We sat across the aisle from one another. She's sitting with her husband. And I suppose that everyone on the flight wanted to kill us by the time it was over, because we never shut up. The entire flight, we talked the whole 8 hours.
Maybe if you sang a song together?
Maybe they would have liked that.
Yeah, they would have liked that, I'm sure. I recall seeing you in the 70s at the Lakeville Manor and at the Milky Way. Weren't you billed as City Life?
Wow.
What made you decide to split with City Life and go out on your own? Yes?
Yes.
Wow.
I did, that's very true. And my first recording was Never Can Say Goodbye, and the arrangement was the arrangement that we did in the show. And I asked the record company to come down and hear it, not only the arrangement, but the response to it, because I thought it should be the next single and title song for my new album. And they agreed with me, and we brought City Life in to play on the recording. They had some difficulty with that in the studio. They had difficulty working in the studio because they were a band that was used to working on the stage. And so there was some difficulty between the producers and them, and they got angry with me, and they all left.
And that's the end of that.
Yeah. I mean, I'm still in touch with a couple of them still, but because we grew up and we got over it. But so we're friends now, but that's why we broke up.
All right. How did you manage to avoid substance abuse? I'm sure you came in contact with drugs and alcohol often.
I didn't avoid it. I just stopped it before it got bad.
And that was that experience you
Yes,
mentioned.
that was that experience. Yeah.
And this is a question I have for you as well. Some of the singers of today that you appreciate, but also people that influenced you time ago, who were those people first?
You know, when you're young, you tend to listen to the music that your parents are listening to at first. Well, at least in my day we did. I don't know these kids nowadays, I don't know. but you know, you hear the music that's being played in your home before you start playing your own music. So I was listening to Nat King Cole, Sarah Vaughan, Gloria Lynn, Nancy Wilson, Frank Sinatra, Barbra Streisand. I was listening to all those people, and I consider them my teachers because they taught me. In listening to them, I learned things like diction and stretching my range because sometimes I couldn't reach the notes that they were reaching, so I just tried every day until I could. I learned proper phrasing from people like Frank Sinatra and Nat King Cole and things like that. So that's the music that I was listening to as a youngster.
And today?
And today, I'm listening to a lot of different things. Mostly I listen to gospel music. I love gospel music, so I listen to Kirk Franklin and B.B. and C.C. Winans and Kim Burrell and artists like that. I also like some of the music that Beyonce has done. I like Bruno Mars. I love Alicia Keys. Justin Timberlake. I want to do something with Justin Timberlake.
Wait. Say that again. This
I said
is a
I
scoop.
want to do a song with Justin Timberlake.
I want to do a song with
Yeah.
I think we can make this happen. I think we should be able to make this happen. Okay, let's put it out there.
Yeah.
A song with, Gloria and Justin. And then Saturday Night Live, and you're all good.
Yeah.
It's fantastic. Beautiful. Okay. Were you a feminist when you recorded I Will Survive, or did you even think of women's rights?
Well, of course, I thought of women's rights. I'm always thinking of women's rights simply because I'm a woman. But I was not what one would call a feminist because I always believed that the feminists, the so-called feminists, they zeroed in on things that to me were kind of unnecessary. Men and women are meant to be partners. We're meant to work together. We complete one another. We really do. And so I was always interested in bringing men and women together and helping them to understand one another. And first thing to understand is that never the twain shall meet. Women are women and men are men and will never be alike, but we're meant to complement one another. So we need to respect and understand one another's differences and just work together, because when we really try, we really can work very well together.
So you are absolutely knowing a little bit about you, I would say you're for everybody's rights.
I'm for everybody's rights, absolutely. Human rights.
Right. We talked in the green room a little bit about I Am What I Am, which is a great song. And I said, the gay community has really embraced you as well. And your response was very similar to that. It's what I just said.
Yeah, it's human rights. Everybody should be treated like human beings.
Okay. So we had these questions. I know that you travel extensively, Gloria, away from the United States. As you mentioned before, you have quite a good community in Europe, but also in Russia. And the last time we spoke on the phone, you were just back from Russia, then leaving for Russia. That's a long trip.
Yeah.
What's going on in Russia?
I don't know. But they seem to want me all the time. And I've even performed for Russians in Italy, in Miami, in Portugal, in Spain. Russians sending for me to come to do things for them.
Okay.
I don't know. I don't know what that's all about.
So it's interesting how some artists pinpoint certain populations, and is that what you're saying is a really huge audience for you?
It is. It is. I mean, when I was speaking to you, I just got through performing for 30,000. An audience of 30,000 in Russia.
Wow.
Right. And the audience before that was like 20,000. So, yeah, huge audience.
Fantastic. So are you traveling back there this summer?
No, I'm going to the south of France.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
For work or play?
Both.
Nice.
Yeah.
What perspective have you gained as an American, as a Jersey girl? A girl from the area, really, Newark, New York, same area. What perspective have you learned with all these extensive travels that you've done all over the world that perhaps somebody else wouldn't have the vision that you've seen?
I've learned that this truly is the best country in the world. The more I travel, the more American I become. But we are so unbelievably spoiled. I mean, a huge paddle ought to come down at the sky and just spank us, because we are bad. I mean, we have very little appreciation for all that we have. We ought to just take a look at how many people come here every year to live. There is a reason for that. So when people complain about the United States, I just want to make them go and live somewhere else for 6 months. Mm-hmm. You know, just go live somewhere else for 6 months and see what the differences are. And recognize that every country has something great. God has given every country something wonderful to serve mankind, because he means for us to be a family, working together, living together, serving one another, and sharing the riches of this planet with one another. That's really what it's all about. And so we need to recognize that so much from every other country has come here and been made available to us right here. We don't need to go anywhere else to get anything except, do we have any volcanoes? I think maybe that's what we don't have. But now that Hawaii is a
right,
state, we even have those. So we have everything here. And we need to learn to appreciate it and appreciate one another and appreciate that the strength and the beauty of America is that all of these other nations have come here and brought the best of their nations with them, so that it is now all a part of who we are. And that's why we're a great nation.
I've read that you are certainly a champion of the underdog. We know that from your music, and that you are concerned with man's inhumanity to man, which has been through the ages, continues to this day, and every day we have really terrible stories. And most recently, what's gone on in the Middle East, these tremendous, horrible acts of violence. What would you say to an individual who's dealt with this kind of loss, who's been through such a hard time? Now that you've culled the book, you've gone through the compilation of stories, you've seen hardship through so many people. Now that you've seen that firsthand with your life, with all these people, what would you say to somebody to get beyond such horror?
It's really difficult to, unless you've gone through the specific thing that someone else has gone through, it's really quite difficult to tell them how to get through whatever it is they're going through. All I can do is tell them that I know who can get them through it, and that's Almighty God. That's a personal one-on-one relationship with Christ Jesus. He will carry you through whatever it is you're going through. He said that if you can go, you might go through the fire, but I'll be in it with you, and you will not be burned. So that's the only advice I can really give, because I think it's presumptuous for anyone who hasn't gone through the specific situation that someone else has gone through to say, you can get through it, you can get over it, no, not on your own. And I can give you love, and I can give you empathy, but I cannot take you through it. I'm not qualified, but I can take you to the one who is.
And we see this in the strength that you have through your performance, through your music, through your recordings. When you are on a stage and performing and you look out, can't see very much with the lights, of course, but you feel the energy of the people.
Oh yeah.
Tell me what you feel from the audience, how you're embraced by this population of people of 30,000, maybe in Russia, coming to adore you.
There is, in my experience, nothing to compare. The best that I can share with you to give you some idea of what it feels like is if you're a person who tells jokes. When you tell a joke and you get to the punchline and everybody laughs, that's how it feels. That's how it feels. Like dinner.
Well, I think this has been an amazing evening. I know that many of you would like to meet Miss Gaynor and purchase her book, let her sign it for you and say hello. But I want to thank you for sharing this beautiful book, your personal stories, and also we should mention that Sue Carswell is your co-author.
Absolutely.
In the book.
Yeah, she was wonderful.
Who helped to find these beautiful stories and these people. We want to wish you continued success.
Thank you.
In the next phase of wherever you're going with this book, with your next recording project, and hopefully we'll even get a couple of weeks on Broadway with you.
Oh.
Please thank Ms. Gloria Gaynor for coming tonight.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
This has been a great pleasure. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Thank you.